Nelson Mandela was a fighter in every sense of the word. He was an amateur boxer as a young man, and he credited the sport with helping instill discipline and the will to persevere through adversity. I am joined now by VOA's Sonny Young from the sunny side of sports. Hi, Sonny. Welcome.
Hi, Alex.
Well, we're going to talk about Mr. Mandela's lifelong association with sports, and that's really what it was, wasn't it, Sonny? I mean, he was a student of boxing, but he really had a love for all kinds of sports.
He was a big sports fan, Alex. As you mentioned, he was an amateur boxer in his younger days. He was also a runner. In his autobiography, Long Walk to Freedom, he wrote about how much boxing helped him withstand the blows of hatred and imprisonment, 27 years behind bars. When he came out, he looked very fit. He was in his early 70s when he got released from prison.
Wow.
But I think his love of fitness really helped him live a long life.
That's an interesting aspect of his legacy, too, because I think a lot of us hear about Mandela in association with politics and apartheid, but to know that he was such a sports figure as well.
He also is credited with helping South Africa win its first African Cup of Nations title. That's kind of like the African Championship in Africa football. They won it a few years after he was released from prison, and he inspired the team just like he inspired the rugby team in 1995.
Right, which I wanted to talk about. So there's this film, of course, about that championship, the Rugby World Championship in 1995. And the film stars Matt Damon. It's called Invictus. And that event is very emblematic, of course, as you mentioned, to Nelson Mandela's power to lead and unite his people. So what more can you tell us about that?
Well, Matt Damon portrayed the captain of that 1995 Rugby World Championship team, Stephen Pienaar, who, by the way, was at Soccer City Stadium for Mr. Mandela's official public memorial. Pienaar, he describes it like he developed a very unique relationship with Mandela. They decided that this rugby team could be used to reconcile the South African people. The rugby team was very much viewed with disdain by the blacks in South Africa. They saw it as a legacy of apartheid. And Mr. Mandela, through his support behind the team, the Springboks is the nickname of the team. And in one of the most emotional scenes from that movie you mentioned, Mr. Mandela presents the trophy to Stephen Pienaar at Ellis Park in Johannesburg, and the crowd just went crazy in appreciation. He's very much viewed as a man who reconciled the South African people out of a very difficult period in that country's history.
And then how amazing, too, that his memorial was held in this sports stadium.
Soccer City Stadium, also called the FNB Stadium in Johannesburg, where, coincidentally, he made what is really regarded as his last public appearance before the 2010 World Cup final between Spain and the Netherlands. I was at the stadium that night, Alex, and I remember every fan getting out of their seats to cheer Mr. Mandela. He came into the stadium in a golf cart, and they just loved to see him. He didn't stay long because it was a very chilly night in Johannesburg, but yeah, I think it may be appropriate that he kind of said farewell at Soccer City.
What was that like for you, that moment, seeing Mr. Mandela in person, such an icon and someone you've, of course, studied in history books and you've reported on?
Well, I was kind of up in the nosebleed section, so I wasn't exactly within arm's reach of Mr. Mandela, but it was still a thrilling moment to be there in front of such a huge crowd and to see, one of the greatest men of this century.
Right. Now, finally, very, very quickly, that 2010 World Cup, he's credited with bringing the World Cup to South Africa. What is the significance of that?
A lot of people feel if it wasn't for Mr. Mandela's lobbying on behalf of South Africa, that the first World Cup ever staged in Africa would not have been. It would have gone to perhaps Morocco, which was another bidding country for that World Cup. But yeah, he's very much seen as the man instrumental in bringing the World Cup to South Africa.
Right, huge impact on the world of sports. Thank you so much, Sonny. We really appreciate you coming on today. Again, this is Sonny Young of VOA's Sunny Side of Sports.
Thank you, Alex.
All right, thank you, Sonny.